Ah, what a great book about just some of the most amazing Halo lore, learning more about Sergeant Johnson, and even our favorite Wait a minute. Johnson, what are you doing? Oh god! It's smut! What's up guys, Xbox Tech Junkie back today with another video. Today we are finally talking about it, Halo Contact Harvest, written by the great Joseph Staten himself. So let's just jump right into it. So, this book was written by none other than Joseph Staten himself, the man, the myth, the legend, the cinematics director over at Bungie, and then for a brief time 343 Industries during the development of Halo Infinite. He is synonymous for many things such as, of course, this book, a lot of the storyboards for Halo 1, 2, 3, and of course our favorite game, Halo 3 ODST, as, like I said, also helping finalize the overall, release of Halo Infinite and then the post-game after for about a year before he, again, departed the game. The book itself was written in 2007, just about a month or so after the release of Halo 3. The book was initially intended to release prior to the game's release, but unfortunately it took a little more time than he thought, so he was able to get out around the game, but not the exact release. And you can kind of see that a little bit in the book, and we'll get more into why I say that, as we go through it. First, let's talk about the cover. The cover is awesome. It is a picture of Johnson on the planet of Harvest, surrounded by his recruits that we'll talk more about through the book. In the distance, you can see, it's a battlefield. You can see the different space elevators that Harvest is well known for, specifically this book, which talks a lot about them. They're very pivotal to the very end game of the book, as well as he's holding a BR-55, or at least I believe it's a BXR-55. Don't quote me on the actual name, I'll put it right here, which is a prototype version of the battle rifle that we know from Halo 2, as well as him wearing a prototype of like some sort of cool heads-up display glasses. Overall, this is probably one of the coolest looking covers I've ever seen, and quite frankly it might be up there with one of my favorites. So with the initial fun stuff out of the way, let's just talk about the actual book. So the book starts off in late 25-24 with Operation Trebuchet, and what that is essentially it's a series of missions where the UNSC is fighting its way to, take out the insurrectionists, our favorite rebels who pretty much just want to be free of the UNSC. At least that's how it starts off originally, but soon becomes a bit of a big terrorist group, at least from the perspective of the UNSC and the UEG colonies. On the planet of Tribute, Johnson, as well as Staff Sergeant Nolan Burns, have two squads, and these squads are going to investigate and raid known insurrection warehouses that are synonymous with making explosives. They're quickly able to find one and take out pretty much everyone in there, and soon realize that one of these bombs is actually in the vicinity at a local diner. The two squads split up, with Johnson getting in a Hornet, getting ready to utilize a sniper to take out any contacts they come across, while Burns' squad takes out the people inside the diner, or at least the insurrectionists, not just random people in the diner, as well as recovering the bomb before it can be utilized. Unfortunately, this pretty much goes south pretty quick, because the moment Burns' team, enters the diner and finds the bomb in a woman's purse, the owner of that purse comes out, sees the squad, panics, grabs a nearby boy and holds him hostage, and she's threatening to blow up the diner with everyone in it. Burns utilizing his headset or his comms to contact Johnson, who's still up in the Hornet with his sniper, basically telling Johnson to take the shot. Unfortunately, Johnson, hesitating because of the boy, allows the woman a brief moment to click the trigger as the father of the boy tries to take her out and try to get the switch away from her. Unfortunately, everything fails, the bomb explodes, and that's where the prologue ends. The book is quick to switch over in the first chapter away from Johnson over to the Horn of Plenty, which is a freighter that is delivering food stuff from the planet of Harvest, or to Harvest from the planet of Madrigal. Yes, that's our favorite planet from the TV series. Wait, guys, please, I'm sorry, don't click off the video. I won't talk about the TV show anymore, I promise. Unfortunately for the ship, while it's making its way to Harvest, it quickly falls out of slipspace due to an issue with the system. We kind of get a brief glimpse of the nav computer. Not really like a smart AI like Cortana, but enough intelligence that it can, determine the problem with the ship, which is the fact that the ship's compact reactors, which fuel slipspace, were overflowed, and this was a problem that can be easily, discovered if someone just did a basic maintenance check on the ship. And so the Horn of Plenty, schedules that and be like, yo, flag this, we need to get it fixed. I gotta throw an SOS beacon because I have no way of going back into slip space, and now I just gotta wait for someone to come save me. Real quickly though, that ship is found by a foreign ship, and the nav computer is able to tell that something is on the ship before a claw comes to its central computing unit and rips it free from the ship. A few weeks later, we cut over to an AI known as Sif. Now, Sif is essentially in charge of the Tiara, the orbital space station that is over the planet of Harvest. The Tiara is essentially what connects Harvest and its space elevators from orbit to the surface. Sif is someone who pretty much manages and, organizes all the different freighters and ships that come to the planet. She, looks at all the scheduled arrivals and departures. So she quickly discovers the SOS beacon sent out by the Horn of Plenty a few weeks ago. She's a little, annoyed by what happened, because she herself knows that this was a very simple thing that someone, another AI on Magical or herself, could have foreseen prior to the ship even leaving the planet. And so quickly she's now panicking and halts any further shipment through the Tiara. This alerts the other AI, the agricultural AI known as Mac. Mac is pretty funny. He's a very flirtatious, cowboy-esque AI who really has feelings for Sif. He's constantly flirting with her. He doesn't really come at her from an aggressive standpoint, more of just, yo, what's going on? Why are we delayed? And her being someone who is very straightforward, follow the rules, follow her algorithm, is quick to pretty much just say, I'll figure it out, don't worry, everything's going to be back to normal, just give me a minute. And he wants to continue talking, but she's quick to cut him off. After she has checked all the other ships and files her reports to another freighter that's leaving for the planet of Reach, she files away her report of what happened to Horn of Plenty, so that way it can take that file to Reach, and whoever oversees any of the shipment stuff can overlook the report. And as the ship is going to leave, Mac pops up to the nav computer and asks if he can send a file too. The nav computer pretty much rejects his requests, but then quickly loses its system function and reboots. And in the middle of the reboot, it asks Mac, what did you just request? And Mac goes, never mind, I'll figure it out, have a good day. And he was able to slip in that report. So already we're getting some weird sense of who Mac might be. We then cut back to Johnson, who after a few weeks from the whole incident on Tribute is pretty much on a leave of absence. He goes back home to the planet of Earth to visit his auntie. When he gets to Earth, he's, all decked out in his service uniform because he wants to impress this woman who has basically been his mother after his mother was divorced by his father, which left her distraught. Dad pretty much left, and she was just someone who was, not emotionally stable to take care of Johnson. So he was sent to live with his aunt, and this woman has supported him every step of the way. And he comes home and finds out that she has been dead for a few days. And it hurts him because originally he wanted to leave Tribute earlier to be with her because he felt like something's wrong. She told him everything's fine, but obviously that was not the case. Johnson, not taking this news lightly, decides to go to a bar of sorts, and he's talking with the ladies who oversee this bar, or not oversee it, but are employed by said bar, and he's paying them money. And as he's doing this, one of the bouncers comes up and is like, all right, military boy, you can't, or soldier boy, you can't be touching the girls, and blah 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 blah. Johnson, not being like being called a boy and being treated like shit, and obviously he's dealing with the whole situation with his auntie, starts fighting this bouncer, and he breaks this dude's arm, fights off two other bouncers while he's completely drunk, makes his escape, finds a little place near the rail station to cuddle up and just wallow in self-pity. Fast forward just maybe a couple days, we see a young recruiter who's kind of down on his luck, trying to get more people to sign up for the UNSC to fight their insurrection. As he makes his way to the recruiting center, he comes across a very homeless looking Johnson, someone who looks like he just has not been taking care of himself. Johnson pretty much says that he's AWOL and he's, willing to report for any sort of consequences that may have come from this. When in reality, the recruiter checks his file and determines like, hey, your transfer has been accepted. Johnson never put in a transfer, so he's very confused by all this, but doesn't seem to argue. Cuddles back into his little ball and falls back to sleep before the recruiter throws him in the back of his car and takes him to somewhere to get him, off planet. Now, one thing I really love about this book is we get a new character named Dadab. Dadab is a young Ungoy, or a grunt. He's also known as the Deacon. And a Deacon is like the highest rank an Ungoy can obtain in the Ministry of Tranquility. The Ministry's main objective is to explore the boundaries of space that the Covenant does not control. And it's here that we see this Ungoy, or Dadab, on this ship overrun by jackals, specifically a jackal shipmistress. Deacon's whole thing, or Dadab's whole thing is he wants to one day become a minister, have his own flock, and preach the gospel of the Covenant, of the great journey to them. But for now, he has to basically be treated like crap because jackals and Ungoy obviously don't get along. Likewise, when it comes to jackals, they're mostly pirates, so they're very much like, you're on my ship and you'll do what I say when I want. If I kill you, I kill you. So he's very much treading carefully on this ship as they are searching the unknown galaxy. Similar to Vilkithemy from Broken Circle, Dadab is also the handler of a Huragok known as Lighter Than Some. And Lighter is he's such an adorable character. He's just so kind, and he, for his namesake, he's very much just a light person, or a light alien engineer, robot. I don't remember how to really explain these things. But overall, what I'm trying to say here is that Lighter Than Some is just too kind to be in the Covenant. We are quickly shown that Dadab and his crew, or at least the ship that he's on, were the ones who came across the Horn of Plenty. And it was them who took the nav computer from the ship. While Dadab brings this little nav computer to Lighter Than Some's just toying with it, trying to figure out what it is, repair it, because that's what engineers do. He quickly realizes, this thing holds coordinates. Not coordinates to its original source planet, which would be magical, but it does hold the coordinates to another planet that it was heading to, Harvest. Dadab quickly takes this information to the shipmistress and says, yo, we should report this to the Ministry. And her realizing, yo, there's alien life on this planet is what you're trying to tell me? And Dadab's like, yeah, this is great because now we can find a new race to bring to the Covenant, because that's what the Ministry does. That's what the Covenant wants. They want more species to find, to bring into the Covenant so that they can continue to build that coalition, that religion. That's what they're really prized about in this part. But before the Dadab can make any sort of suggestion of warning the Ministry, the shipmistress says, let's go investigate first before we make any, sudden movements. A few months later, late into 2525, we then cut back to Johnson, who's awaking from cryosleep. He is, finally arrived at Harvest, and we see he's having nightmares about, what happened on Tribute. He's not fully, it's definitely trauma for him not being able to save anyone, and specifically not being able to protect the boy that was the whole reason why he hesitated to shoot with to begin with. Upon waking up from cryosleep, though, he does meet a young petty officer, first class, named Healy. And that's all I get from his name. I've looked at Halopedia, it's just Healy. There's nothing more. Healy's more of a young, brash type of soldier. He's definitely, not in it for the honor and to fight. He's here to wear a uniform and use that uniform to the best of his ability for personal gain. And what I mean by that, I mean women, show off to the ladies. And as him and Johnson are making their way down the space elevator, which takes a couple hours, it's almost like they're on a plane for a moment. We kind of get a different look at Johnson, and likewise we get to figure out what Johnson's here to do. These two are part of the Colonial Military Training, or CMT. Now what this group does is they essentially take non-soldiers, people who aren't essentially signing up for the UNSC, but are signing up to be trained in military training so that they can be able to defend their planet from insurrection or any other possible, conflicts down the road. And there's no like deeper like, oh, we already know about the aliens. Like it's definitely just specifically to train them to fight against insurrection. That is the UNSC's whole goal with this. As the two make their way down to the surface, they take a sedan to their new training base. But before that, Healy wants to take the sedan to a bar because he heard from a couple of guys on the space elevator that there's a great bar, there's pretty ladies, someone like you could probably definitely be a show off to those ladies, and, do it. Healy wants to go do this, but Johnson is quick to shut that down, taking control of the sedan, and he rips into Healy. He's telling Healy, like, you don't wear your uniform to get personal gain, to be glorified. You don't use it for women. You use this uniform because it honors, who you are, who the UNSC is. It honors those who have died in this uniform and who can no longer wear it now. And, Healy kind of thinks Johnson's an ass, but he doesn't fight him on it. He kind of just says, yes, sir. But it's so funny coming from Johnson because obviously we just saw back on Earth that Johnson was doing the exact same thing in his uniform just a couple months ago. He was using it to, entice ladies and use it to his own personal gain. And he calls himself out mentally in this situation. He says it's crazy that he himself can even say such things when he was just doing it. We get the idea that this is a very different Johnson than the one we're used to in Halo Combat Evolved and up until 3. He's still very much that, like, stoic and strong leader. He's so much more strict, so much more like there's not enough of that fun, charismatic Johnson, at least in the beginning. It's very much stricter Johnson. Arriving to base, Johnson and Healy meet Captain Ponder, the officer who will be overseeing the training. Ponder has one arm. He doesn't really explain why he has it right here, right now, but he pretty much just informs the two that, like, hey, welcome to the base. The recruits will be here on Monday. The second platoon leader should be here today at some point. Johnson, you're platoon leader number 1. Go ahead and get to your barracks, get situated. Healy, you're our like medic, so to speak, so you're gonna go ahead and sleep in this area. If you gentlemen have any questions, let me know. And it's very straightforward and quick. As Johnson is in his bunk or his barrack getting, situated and everything, Healy comes in and says, like, where I'm supposed to be sleeping isn't fully put together right now. Do you mind if I bunk with you just for tonight? If not, I can bunk with the other platoon leader. And Johnson's like, who's the other platoon leader? And, Healy pulls out the old scroll and says, oh, yes, a Nolan Burns. Now, if you already forgotten who that is, Nolan Burns was the second squad leader from the very beginning with Tribute. He was the one that was inside the diner telling Johnson to take the shot. And this immediately makes Johnson freeze because he realizes he knew that Burns lived, but pretty much all of Burns' like squad died. I don't really know how Burns lived, but he was hospitalized from burns and all that kind of stuff. Hey, burns. But overall, this makes Johnson freeze because he realizes that Burns is going to hate him and this is going to be a problem. And as if some sort of like foretelling of the future, almost 2 seconds after this conversation, Burns does arrive. And he knows exactly where Johnson is. And sure as enough, the moment he walks in, it's on site with these two. They start fighting. Johnson actually has a relatively good upper hand on him, but eventually gets, overtaken by Burns. And Burns is starting to choke Johnson out. But before Burns can do anything, Ponder comes in with a Magnum and, tells them both to lock it down right now. Burns initially isn't going to listen until Ponder's basically pointing his gun at him and says, you're going to do it or I'm going to shoot. Burns stops and Ponder says, both of you finish this right here, right now, and then figure out how to like work with each other because, you both are better than this. Burns gets a hit on Johnson. Johnson gets a quick hit on Burns. And that's it. That is the end of their fist-to-fist conflict. Doesn't mean that Burns has forgiven Johnson. It just means in this moment, they're moving forward. So, kind of like I said, Sif was very annoyed by the whole situation when it came to Horn Plenty's malfunction. She knew she was going to get some sort of, being berated by some upper officer just because it was a very simple thing that could have been monitored, maintained, and fixed before it ever became a problem. But she thought she would have a long time before she would ever hear about it. Unfortunately, the Department of Commercial Shipping, also known as DCS, sent one of their managers, a woman known as Jalon Alsigny. Alsigny is here to get testimony from Sif and figure out what went wrong. As Sif is getting ready to tell her what happened, Alsigny says, hold on, we have another party joining us. And unbeknownst to Sif, Mac is also joining, which is very weird for Sif because she never really told Mac what happened. And so while they're both giving their testimony, on the deeper end, from a more deeper AI level, they're having a personal conversation. She's pretty much saying, just follow my lead. Here's all the information I can give you. Like, just don't mess this up for me. And Mac's like, okay, I won't do it. And it's here where they're kind of also arguing. Mac makes his first little quote of Shakespeare, a way of kind of like flirting, but also getting on Sif's bad side. And so she tries to quote every living piece of Shakespeare that she can to him. It's a funny back and forth, while at the same time they're both giving testimony to Alsigny. And Alsigny's a very curious character because right here she can tell something's going on deeper. She's not dumb. She immediately says like, hey, I don't really respect you guys having personal conversations. Let's be out front right now. And both of them lock back in. So back on the ship with Dadab and Lighter Than Some, which I forgot to mention, the ship that they're on is known as Minor Transgression. Dadab is playing a little rock game. And the game is essentially where he tosses a rock at space grubs, like these weird little insect type creatures, and he kills them. The idea is the more you kill, the more points, the more fun. And Dadab's talking to Lighter Than Some like, hey, play with me, like look, and throws a rock and kills it. And Lighter Than Some's like, no, that's just murder. Why would I do that? Like, this is dumb. And before Dadab can try and make it fun for Lighter Than Some, he is quickly called to the bridge by the ship mistress. This is kind of important to know. I know it's kind of a weird little thing to talk about, but it's important for Lighter Than Some's character development going forward. So like I said, on the ship, Dadab had originally found the coordinates to Harvest. They make their way close to the planet and are using a luminary, which is like this device that the Covenant uses to essentially illuminate the path and find Forerunner relics. And it's here they come across a very important relic on the planet. And the relic symbol is translated to reclamation, which is like the most important relic that the Covenant could find. And so here Dadab's like, we definitely gotta tell the Ministry now. And again, the ship mistress is like, we can, but let me just do some investigation. Let me just make sure that this really is the reclamation relic that we're looking for. And Dadab's like, and she's like, nothing. All right, we're gonna go in, we're gonna go out. The ship mistress plan here is to, obviously find the relics, but she's trying to get first score on some things that she can sell, therefore utilizing the funds to buy her way out of her contract with the Covenant, so that way she can take her ship wherever she wants and essentially go mate and have little KGR children. We then cut to a ship known as This End Up, ran by a captain known as Hank Gibson. Hank transfers a lot of different things from planet to planet, specifically Harvest. This time he is bringing a prototype of a Jotun. Jotuns are like massive, like all-in-one farming equipment machines. They're plows, they help with crops, they just do all these things that you would essentially need to run a farm. And they are synonymous with the planet of Harvest. Harvest has different series, the most recent series being 5, and then now Gibson's bringing this prototype. And Gibson's also kind of similar to the ship mistress. He's just trying to raise enough money to kind of go out and do his own thing. But before he can do that, his ship is disabled by Minor Transgression. Being pissed off and not realizing that this is an alien species, he grabs his fire extinguisher and he's getting ready to go beat up whoever happened to hurt his ship. Unfortunately for little Dadab, as he's making his way around the ship and looking for, more of the nav computers, they come across the Jotun, don't really know what it is. They can read the lettering, but, it's like reading another language you don't know. They're like, what the heck is a Jotun? Creepy machine. They're looking for what the reclamation symbol is because they find another symbol of it on this ship, but they can't find any Forerunner relics. But as Dadab is searching, he starts getting hit out of nowhere by Hank with this fire extinguisher. And as Hank's just about to kill the dog, Hank himself gets hit by something, falls, and dies. And we come to find out that Lighter Than Some had found a rock, launched that at the back of Hank's head, killing him. Almost immediately after this, Sif is alerted to the destruction of this end-up. And so she immediately reports it to Alsigny. Alsigny gets on, looks at her computer, and realizes this is the first time any of these freighters that have gone down, or gone missing at least, had human life. It's kind of weird because it's like, wait, so there's a greater story to these missing freighters going on? But we don't get an explanation of that until now. Now this is where Joseph Stain, for me, okay, maybe not for me, but at least for a lot of us, is a GOAT, because we get an amazing origin story of the man, the myth, the legend, Jenkins.
God damn it, Jenkins! Fire your weapon!
That's right, that Jenkins. The Jenkins who is on Installation 04, the one that Master Chief finds and watches the cam footage of them getting attacked by the Flood for the first time. Man who, after reading this book, makes it even so much worse that Jenkins dies there. It's truly depressing. Thank you, Mr. Staten. I needed this. Jenkins is a young man, and he has joined the CMA recruits so that way he can find a way to get off this planet. He doesn't want to be a farmer. He doesn't care about his family legacy. He wants to do something greater. But before he can do that, he's got to be able to survive Johnson's training.
God damn it, Jenkins!
The training itself is pretty standard. Learn to shoot, learn how to fight, do all this kind of stuff, be more stoic, drink your water after running miles upon miles. All very basic stuff. And while Johnson and Burns are training their two platoons, Captain Ponder comes up to John and says, like, yo, I've been invited to a formal festival in the city of Utgard, the main city of Harvest. Will you come with me? Johnson pretty much doesn't take it as a request, but more of an order, and says, yes, sir, I'll go with you. We then cut to the two heading off to Utgard in a warthog. And it's here where Johnson finally gets a little bit more answers, not about why he's here, but what happened to Ponder's mom. It's here that it's revealed to us that Ponder's original mission years ago, at the kind of the height of the Insurrection War, he was sent to the planet of Eridanus 2, which is a very important planet for those who know, but if you don't know, we'll get to it very soon, I promise. On Eridanus 2, he was tasked with finding the second in command of Robert Watts, essentially the leader of the insurrection. Here he finds out that the family of the second in command, his wife, is at home with her parents. He goes there, he tries to be cordial and simply just says, please, can you hand over this man? I don't want anything to happen. And the father of the second command's wife goes, yeah, sure. Psych, pulls out a detonator. And right here, Ponders thinks this is more of a bluff, but it's not, because one of his Marines or his soldiers in his platoon, his platoon, gets itchy feet, snipes the father, causing the father to click the detonator, kind of like what happened with Johnson. And in this moment of just pure chaos, Ponder's going to try and, oh, my apologies, it wasn't a detonator, it was a grenade. He pulls the pin, gets shot, Ponder goes to grab the grenade, goes off, many people die. Ponder somehow lives, but obviously loses an arm, gets demoted, and that's why he's now on this planet training these people. But he does reveal to Johnson that he doesn't know why Johnson's here. He read his file, but he himself doesn't quite grasp it either. At this party, we kind of see Johnson a little bit out of his element. He's obviously well put together. He's in a dress uniform, but there's a lot of people who are still skeptical about having UNSC soldiers on here. I guess getting just the training, the training that they're doing approved was kind of a back and forth in the parliament of Harvest's government. But here he meets the governor of the planet, a man by the name of Governor Thune, as well as the Attorney General Peterson. We also learn that during big festivals, they use Harvest's mass driver, this thing that was originally on the colony ship that brought people to Harvest, which has now been taken off the ship and brought down to the planet. They utilize it for a couple of things. One, they use the mass driver to launch things into the atmosphere, mostly trash, but they also use it for big extravagant parties such as this. And if you don't know what a mass driver is, think of it similar to that giant gun that you use at the end of Halo Reach to take out the cruiser before it reaches the Pillar of Autumn. While Johnson is, mingling with people and talking with the Attorney General Peterson, Peterson's like, yo, like, come with me. I want you to meet someone. Johnson's brought to like this more private area of the party, and this is where he meets Jalon Alsigny, who's now more of an address. And at first, Johnson's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, you're pretty. And she's like, aw. So you're Staff Sergeant Avery Johnson, service number, blah, 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 part of Tribute, Orion, and starts just naming off all of Johnson's service record. Immediately he's thrown off and he goes, who the hell are you? And this is where we get the big reveal for why Alsigny's there's such a deeper character to her that we were originally shown. It's revealed that Alsigny is a lieutenant commander from Oni, and she's here for a mission for Johnson. And it's right here immediately that Johnson goes, this is why I was brought here. Back on Minor Transgression though, they've come across yet another freighter. And this time they've found even more relic symbols. They're a little disappointed because after the last ship, this ended up, they could not find any foreign relics even though the Luminary said there was. Making their way onto this new ship, it's now this time just the Jackals and the ship mistress. Dadab and Lighter Than Some stayed on the ship. Dadab said he was, just stressed after being attacked by an alien, needs time to recoup. And ship mistress says whatever. And so while her and her fellow male Kigyars are searching the ship, they are immediately attacked by Johnson and Burns, who are now floating in 0G space in the ship, utilizing the prototype battle rifles. After a quick duel where they take out most of the Jackals, Burns gets injured. Johnson chases the ship mistress back to her ship that's connected by an umbilical cord. On the ship mistress pretty much realizes she's doomed. There's no getting away from this. She quickly finds out that while she was on the human ship, Dadab had sent out the data transmission of what they found, of the reclamation symbol to the Ministry. Immediately angered by the fact that she's about to die and now she was betrayed, her last goal is to kill Dadab. But before she can do that, she comes across Johnson, who places some well shots. They're both outside of Dadab's methane suite, which is essentially like a room just where they breathe methane specifically for the Ungoy. And now this mortally wounded ship mistress is like, I'm gonna die, but you're going with me, buddy. Shoots a charged plasma pistol bolt into the methane room, causing a chain reaction, and the ship starts to explode. As Johnson's trying to make his way back to the umbilical, he gets injured and gets, thrown unconscious. We then cut to Dadab and Lighter Than Some, who've made their way to escape pod and successfully get off the ship. 3 days later, after the events that happened on the ship with Minor Transgression blew up. Dadab escaped, and Johnson was recovered by Burns, who was still injured by getting stabbed with a needler spike. Didn't kill him, didn't go off, but it was enough to injure him. But not enough for him to not, be able to save Johnson. Johnson wakes up in a hospital room where he's surrounded by Burns, Peterson, and Alsigny. Real quickly, he's getting debriefed. They're asking questions, could you talk to them? Do you know why they were here? Anything else? And Johnson pretty much just gives them a spiel of what happened. After Thune and Peterson leave, Johnson quickly asks Alsigny what the plan is. And she says there is no real plan because Thune, since he's the governor of the planet, doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't know enough to request that the Unity send ships here. Again, it was just a pain getting the approval for the CMT training, let alone asking for full-on warships from the Unity to come protect them. Johnson's annoyed by this because he's like, we just made contact with an alien species that have highly advanced technology. What do you mean we're not calling in the cavalry? We gotta do something. And Alsigny's like, there's nothing I can do. He's in control. Johnson quickly gets up, starts getting prepared. He says, well, then I got men to train because they're the only ones that can protect this planet. Alsigny's like, you can go train them, but you will not tell them anything about the Covenant. We then cut back to our favorite AI, Sif. Sif knows something went down on that ship. Again, she monitors all the comings and goings of ships on Harvest. At the main orbital station of the TR that she runs, all ships go through there. All freighters go through there. So she knows everything, but she wasn't told why they left, why there was a second ship, why there was a foreign ship, why suddenly Johnson's injured. She wasn't told any of that. And so she's trying to piece things together. And as she's doing this, Mac sends a data cluster message saying, "Hey, could you help me with something? I just need to talk to you real quick." She splits off a fragment of herself, sends it down the tiara to Mac's main data center, basically his core. It's here where Sif kind of gets a better idea of what Mac does for the planet. Makes her truly impressed with him, but still she's kind of curious what he wants. As she's doing some exploration of his overall core and centers, she comes across a second data core. But unlike Mac's current data core, which is active and working, the other one's dark and quieter. It's working, but it's not at full capacity like Mac is. Mac then reveals that he has a second half, a double personality, another AI. And this other AI is known as a PSI. It's a planetary security intelligence. What it does is it essentially defends planets. It runs the security of the planet. Mac's current job is just to run all agricultural duties. Every Jotun, every farm equipment, anything having to do with anything on the planet, Mac runs it. But he's just more of like, the automated services system. Loki, which is the other AI, is a much more advanced version of Mac who will defend the planet, is more military than just specifically agricultural. Mac reveals that pretty soon the aliens, and reveals that there is aliens to Sif, are going to come back, and he wants to defend Harvest. So to do this, he needs to activate Loki. But when he does that, Mac essentially goes bye-bye. He doesn't die, he just pretty much goes into a different state of being, and we'll get more into what I mean by that later. But he does ask Sif, I need you to help me with one thing, and that's place these propulsion pods into specific parts of our orbit around the tiara. Everything will make sense later. Sif pretty much agrees to do it, and you can tell she's starting to be a little more amazed and mesmerized with Mac, and a little more concerned, especially now that there's another AI coming, known as Loki, and she doesn't really know what this means for the future. We also learned that Al Signy was the one that activates Loki, or at least she tells Mac to activate Loki. He tells her he's going to first tell Sif before he does that, because he cares about Sif. But Governor Thune does not know. He doesn't know Mac has another side. He knows nothing of Loki. So it's again Oni just being able to have all these secret intelligence systems on different planets without anyone knowing. When it comes to Dadab and Lighter Than Some, they have been hurtling in space for quite some time. Their escape pod has the ability to do slip space, but it's not as precise and can't go as far as he would like. So he goes back to the initial area where they left when they found the first freighter, hoping that someone picked up the data cluster that they left behind and would come and rescue him. Fortunately for him, he's been living off methane that Lighter Than Some has been producing. They've ran out of gravity, Lighter Than Some's not doing good, so they're on the cusp of death until they're saved by a ship that was sent by the Minister of Tranquility. We start off with a young Sanchayun on high charity. He's named Minister of Fortitude. Fortitude is leaving basically a dispensary where he got a medication or medicated tea that's supposed to help out with headaches. He's making his way back to his office where he recounts things like the Grunt Rebellion and the Writ of Union and the difference between Sanchayun and Sangheili. All these kinds of things that we've learned a little bit more about in Halo Broken Circle, which is why I say Broken Circle is such a great book to read before this one. We also learned that as a younger Sanchayun, Fortitude had come across a conspiracy of the Kigyar sterilizing the Ungoi, which also prompted the Ungoi Rebellion. He tried telling his higher-ups about this. They pretty much said, we'll deal with it, but keep your mouth shut. Which costed the original minister his job and what helped propel Fortitude to a higher status. Fortitude's current job now is to oversee the wealth of the Covenant and make sure it's distributed equally amongst its different races and caste systems. But what's more important about Fortitude is, as he's making his way to his office, he gets a message from the Vice Minister of Tranquility. And we can tell real immediately that Fortitude doesn't really like Tranquility. Tranquility is a much younger Sanshayim compared to Fortitude, but he's more like overly ambitious, a little brash, most specifically because since he runs part of the Ministry of Tranquility, he's out on ships a lot with the Sankhili. He's meeting with Sankhili on different matters. He's never on High Charity as much, so he's always away. And this is very important for who his character is later. Real quick, Tranquility tells Fortitude, like, yo, I have something that's important. We need to talk about it. At first, Fortitude's like, I don't really have the time. Sorry, bud. Until Tranquility shows off the symbol of reclamation. And immediately, Fortitude's like, in my office right now. The two meet up, and it's kind of here when, you know, he reveals where they found it, who found it, and he also reveals here that Tranquility himself hates the current hierarchs, the top 3 prophets. And these are prophets before those of truth, regret, and mercy. They're different ones that predate them. And he's saying like, oh, I hate them. They're fools. This age of doubt that we're in sucks. We're about to enter a brand new age of reclamation, and you, Fortitude, are the main Sanshayim who can lead us through it. So I will give you this information, and I will support you unconditionally if I can be that hierarch sitting next to you. Meaning he's telling Fortitude that, like, we can become hierarchs. We can become the next prophets. I'm willing to help you if you're willing to let me be that hierarch with you. Fortitude kind of debates the issue, and he sees the goal. He sees that it's obtainable, but he's hesitant. At first, he's thinking, maybe I should just reject this and have this fool killed or something. But then he's really looking at the situation. He's thinking about how well Tranquility has done his part. And so he goes, okay, but we have a lot to do, and you need to make sure that we can confirm that this is the reclamation. Tranquility's like, I got you. I already got someone en route. And this panics Fortitude because he thinks he means the Sankhili. He thinks he's sending elites to go investigate the reclamation symbols at Harvest. This is a problem because the Sankhili can now bring this to their council, since they're one of the higher-ups in High Charity, which would also alert the Sanshayim Council and cause this whole issue where Fortitude and Tranquility cannot obtain their goal. But Tranquility says, wait, no, don't worry. There's someone who can keep a good secret, and they're not Sankhili. This is where we meet Maccabeus. And Maccabeus is a brute chieftain of the ship known as Rapid Conversion. This is where we cut back and see that Dadab and Lighter Than Some are saved by Rapid Conversion. Now, initially when they're brought into like the vehicle bay, a young second-in-command of Maccabeus tries to open up the escape pod. Dadab, knowing that this could actually potentially hurt Lighter Than Some because of the decompression issue, does something to cause the ship or the like space escape craft to move, and it like breaks one of the spirit dropships. And we learn real quickly that this ship is heavily in need of repair. And the reason because this is still early on when elites still do not trust the brutes. Maccabeus is a very rare chieftain because he's also a shipmaster, and that is very rare for the brutes in the Covenant right now. We learned that when he was given this ship, the reason he was given it was because it's pretty much falling apart. It's seconds away from just dying. The gravity lift doesn't work. They have to use drones, aka Yanmi, to help with repairs, and they're not the best. They're only given a limited amount of dropships, and they're not allowed a Huragok or engineer, which is why it's very fruitful on this day. One has come to Maccabeus. And when Maccabeus comes down to investigate the disturbance on the vehicle bay, at first he's mad because the dropship's destroyed. He's like, dude, are we serious? We do not have enough stuff for this. What are you doing, Tartarus? And this is where we find out that his second-in-command and nephew is the Tartarus that will be the chieftain of the brutes in Halo 2 under the Prophet of Truth. When the escape craft is officially able to be opened, though, immediately Maccabeus has the engineer put to work, fixing the drop ship for one, because you broke it, you need to fix it. He's also happy that Dadab's here, kind of, because it's a deacon. It's basically someone who's been gifted some sort of place of status by the Sanshayim, the prophets, even though it's mostly through the Ministry of Tranquility, but that's not important to him as much. When Dadab is talking with Lighter Than Some's still very much affected by him killing a human earlier. And it's here where he tells Dadab that he's like, hey, I have a great idea. I'm working with the human technology that we found, and I'm going to make a peace offering. And this panics Dadab because I guess in the Covenant, it is almost illegal to mess with alien technology, more specifically messing with artificial intelligence, because through Covenant, history and through former mythology and all that, they know about mendicant bias. They know about how it turned against the foreigners. And so they always say, like, we cannot trust this level of artificial intelligence. It's illegal. Anyone caught doing it will be put to death. And that's why Dadab panics. He also panics because Lighter Than Some's not working on the dropship. He's working on these newer plows that Lighter Than Some wants to give to humanity as a peace offering. Dadab then really begs him to fix it before he's summoned away by Tartarus. On the bridge of Rapid Conversion, Dadab sees now again the outline or a holographic projection of Harvest. And here he sees throughout the entire planet is a vast number of reclamation symbols. He's excited, all the brutes are in awe, and they also see that there's an area that has been indicated by the alien species or humanity saying, land here, we wish to barter or parlay with you. A little bit before this though, back on Harvest, Johnson returns to base, discovers that Jenkins and another soldier have qualified as sharpshooters. He then takes all the recruits on a training operation. In this exercise, it's essentially Johnson and Burns versus the other 68 recruits. The goal? Whatever team takes out half of the other team first wins. That means in order for Johnson and Burns to win, they have to take out 34 recruits. In order for the recruits to win, they have to take out at least one of Johnson or Burns. And they get close. Burns and Johnson nearly take out all the recruits. They're actually only a few numbers away from taking the win. However, in the last few moments, Burns is shot and the recruits win. But just as they're celebrating and they're excited, Ponder reaches out to John and says, yo, our friends are back, and they brought a bigger ship this time. 48 hours later, the recruits are now all at the Botanical Gardens, this place where they're going to parlay with the Covenant. Moments after their celebration earlier, though, that's when they were informed about the Covenant, and that's when they were told, like, this is what we're training you for. You have until this date for us to prepare you as much, and yeah, like, that's all we got for you. And the recruits are obviously baffled, a little annoyed that they were kept in the dark, but they go about it, and they get prepared. The parlay, for the most part, goes okay up until the very end. Johnson and Burns meet with Maccabeus and Tartarus. They escort them to the greenhouse where Thune, Peterson, Alcimi, and Ponder are waiting. And while the delegates are like talking, or at least trying to talk, pretty much they're showing off like images and videos of this is what Harvest does. And Maccabeus shows him a piece of metal from the ship that they destroyed, saying, we want the planet. But before anything else can go off, gunfire happens outside from a rifle. Immediately, everyone goes on the defensive, and Peterson, being the unfortunate one to be closest to Maccabeus, takes a swing from the Fist of Rook, the hammer that one day will be Tartarus's, dies instantaneously. Maccabeus and Tartarus then retreat back to their ship while Johnson and the rest of the recruits protect Thune and Ponders and Alcigny and fight off whatever Covenant they have in the vicinity. As Maccabeus makes his way back to the ship, he asked for a report on the Oracle, but on the relics that they found, and they informed like there was no relics, like we could not find anything. And Maccabeus says, the luminary says they were right where I was standing, like right with the humans. That's where it says it was. And they're like, sorry, there was nothing, but we did get a signal for an oracle. And that becomes very important to Maccabeus. All right, this whole section right here is what's going to take a good amount of this video. So, here it goes. We cut back to High Charity. Fortitude is outside the Dreadnought, the big ship that we know a lot about from Broken Circle, Halo 3, Halo 2. He's waiting for Tranquility, and the reason why he's waiting is because Tranquility's off celebrating with his family, like so many of the other Sanshayum are. On this night, many of the females have given birth, and people are celebrating. Fortitude reveals that, he's on the role of celibacy. We get a little bit of a discussion of what the role of celibacy is, even though we know it from Broken Circle. He talks about how he's on it, one of the current prophets is on it, and that current prophet, known as the Prophet of Restraint, happened to have a scandal where he got a female pregnant. A female who did not want to give up the child. Panicked by this because even though he is a prophet, if it's discovered that he broke the rule of celibacy, he could be put to death alongside the child. Fortitude, knowing this information, tells Tranquility to befriend Restraint. Basically become his biggest ally and be like, yo, we should get rid of the role of celibacy. Again, no one knows what Restraint does. And it's here where Restraint and Tranquility form a good bond. And Restraint says, will you please adopt his kids so that way no one finds out? Tranquility goes, of course my friend, I'll do that. And now that that plan worked out, Fortitude can use this to his advantage to blackmail Restraint later. It's crazy work. Finally, Tranquility arrives, telling him that the child was born, not really his children, but the children of Restraint. It's here that they reveal, like, okay, we need to go into the Dreadnought, take the reclamation data that we got from Harvest, and meet a philologist. A philologist is someone who oversees, caretakes, protects, whatever you want to call it, the oracle that's in the Dreadnought. He also interprets the will of the oracle. This is important because Fortitude believes philologists are phonies. Everyone pretty much knows that the oracle never speaks, so half the time they're coming up with their own interpretations, they're bribed by other Sanshayum. So he believes going into this that this philologist is nothing but a fraud. He's just another political figure. He's just going to want money to be bribed for me to get what I want, which is the oracle's blessing. If he gets the oracle's blessing, it's another major support for him becoming a hierarch. Making their way on the ship, we learn a little bit more about what the Sanshayum have been doing. They've been sending in little Huragok worms, the worms that are on hunters, that can go into different parts of the ships, basically eat the technology, and then they're pulled back out and then scanned of that technology. It's very weird, but it's their way of probing the ship further. It's a vast ship that they still have not fully explored, oddly enough. Making their way to the central room where the oracle is, as well as the philologist. Philologist is a much older Sanshayum, and he asks what they want. Fortitude hands him a data wafer and says, just need to ensure this is real and for a blessing. As soon as the philologist puts this chip in, the oracle awakens. This causes both Fortitude and Tranquility to be stunned, but then we see the philologist basically get out of his grab chair, start bending down and praising it. So it goes to show this dude's not a phony. He truly is a religious, devoted man. He's not someone who's just another political figure, and this is important for later. And it's here where this oracle says to these three Sanshayum that he has watched for ages, watching them misinterpret. And so they ask him, okay, well, what have we misinterpreted? What do we need to know? He shows them the image, the symbol of reclamation, and he turns it upside down and says, this does not mean reclamation, it means reclaimer. And the symbol represents my makers. Hello, and welcome to Are Humans Foreigners by James Vargas. I'm your host, James, and this is going to be a fun part because this is such a contentious point in the Halo franchise. Are humans foreigners? There will some who will say yes, and then there will be some who say no. The official lore under Bungie was a mixed message. Joseph Stain certainly believes so. Halo 3, you are foreigner.
Absolutely unacceptable! Protocol dictates action! I see now that helping you was wrong! You are a child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
That's what 343 Guilty Spark says to the Chief, basically indirectly saying it to all of humanity. The original ending of Halo 2 was to reveal that humans were foreigners, but then was quickly changed when that game went through development hell and they made Halo 3, which is why this book was supposed to release before Halo 3. And you can tell that the team working on the book, aka Joseph Stain, the team working on the game, and the team working on the terminals for Halo 3 did not communicate whatsoever. Drives me crazy. This book, yes, it confirms that humans are foreigners. Lore-wise, under 343, that's obviously been changed. Humans and foreigners are related through precursors. They're both sibling species, I guess, so to speak. Whether you want to hear my whole personal belief on whether humans and foreigners being different or the same, you're not going to get it out of me because, quite frankly, I don't want to be pulled down the rabbit hole. I'm basically just going to be giving you what the lore says. From this book, yes, this is the case. Humans are foreigners. Does that mean, though, every book and every game after it should be retconned, or if there should be a different timeline, or what? No. I think we're at this point now that this book is, I don't even know, almost 20 years old. And we're already so much further in established universe that they're different, lore-wise. And this can be taken in different ways, different interpretations, different meanings on what he means by they're his makers. They are reclaimers, therefore they're reclaiming the mantle, reclaiming the Foreigner Empire and technology. They are now the holders of all technology, therefore they are his makers. It is a very mixed message, and it's very much a problem within the Halo lore. But this book all but confirms that. But let's get back to the actual book now. Realizing that the symbol was not finding relics, it was finding humanity, and humanity are foreigners, again in this situation, panics Fortitude. He realizes that with this information, the entire covenant can come falling down. And so it's here where this oracle pretty much says, right here, God, it's so beautiful, he will reject his bias and make amends. If that makes or sounds familiar at all, it's because this oracle is mendicant bias. It is part of mendicant bias that escaped the Ark, got onto this very ship, caused it to crash land on Gender Quam all those eons ago, and then he remained silent for all these years. And now he's trying to reawaken the Dreadnought to go to humanity and bring them to the Ark. But before he can do that, the Legolo short-circuit him as well as the ship and cause it to shut down. And this is where Fortitude says, we got to keep this quiet. And Tranquility goes, okay, but what about the philologist? Philologist is now studying like the oracle, like, oh my god, it's the gods. And Fortitude goes, well, we just found our third hierarch. And if you see where this is going, you know who these three are. If you don't, we'll get there. And that is where we're actually going to end this video. As you can probably tell by the wardrobe change, I'm recording this at a much different time than the original video. That is simply because I decided that I didn't want to try and speed run the next half of the book like I did on the original recording. It just felt too sloppy and didn't give that last half the attention that it really needed. So we're going to end it right here, but do not fret. Unlike Halo Silentium, where I had part 1 come out like a year ago and then part 2 literally just a couple of weeks ago, part 1 and part 2 of this book are going to be released pretty much at the same time, probably a day or two difference between, but definitely not as long as last time. But yes, that is it for part 1 of Contact Harvest. I will see you in part 2.